In an era when every news cycle seems to give us fresh reason for despair, last week was an especially hard week. A devastating earthquake in Haiti, whose people already endure untold suffering. COVID cases continuing to rise in the US and ICUs filling up again. Fears for children and conflicts about masks as schools resume. And hovering over everything, Afghanistan, the failure of the American mission, and the desperation and humanitarian crisis we leave in our wake. It's above my pay grade to explain any of it. People far smarter than I am will be debating what went wrong and why and what if for decades to come. My role as a priest is to ask, where is Jesus in all this? And what does Jesus ask of us who follow him? This is our fifth and final Sunday for a while in the Gospel according to John. In the Episcopal Church, we use a lectionary, a calendar of readings that takes us through most of the Bible over the course of 3 years. 1 year focuses on the Gospel of Matthew, 1 year on Mark, and 1 year on Luke. Sections of the Gospel of John are mixed in throughout the 3-year cycle. Mark is the shortest Gospel, so to fill out Mark's year, we spend 5 weeks with chapter 6 of John's Gospel, which is all about Jesus as the bread of life. John's Gospel used to be my least favorite of the 4. It relies on elaborate symbolism that's difficult to understand. John's Jesus is always banging on about believing in him, which makes faith difficult when believing is a challenge. John's clumsy, inaccurate labeling of Jesus' opponents as the Jews has caused a great deal of harm to our Jewish cousins over the centuries. But despite all that, and to my surprise, the more time I've spent with John's Gospel, the more I've come to appreciate and even love it. The text is full of these little connections. One small detail refers to half a dozen others, which pull the gospel together into a richly textured, intricately layered whole. The insight that really unlocked John's gospel for me comes from Caroline Lewis, a Lutheran pastor and John scholar. She points out that John is not trying to convey information about Jesus. John's goal is to cultivate an experience of Jesus. John hopes that in reading and hearing his gospel, we will encounter Jesus. And that encounter with Jesus will draw us into relationship with Jesus. That deepening relationship with Jesus will transform us and send us out to draw others into relationship with Jesus, that they too may be transformed. John gives us several examples of experience and relationship and transformation and sending in his gospel. The one that takes the longest to unfold is Simon Peter. In John's telling, Simon is brought to Jesus by his brother Andrew right at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. Jesus looks at him and says, "You are Simon, son of John. You are to be called Peter." That experience of being fully seen and fully known draws Simon to Jesus. Simon Peter joins the group of disciples following Jesus as he carries out his ministry. The next time Simon Peter appears by name is after Jesus has fed a huge crowd, 5,000 people, with only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Jesus says to the crowd, "My Father gives you the true bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." The crowd says, "Give us this bread always." Jesus replies, "I am the bread of life, the living bread that came down from heaven. The bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh." The crowd is baffled. So Jesus goes on, "Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood abide in me and I in them. If the crowd was confused before, they're offended now. This sounds like cannibalism. For Jewish people like Jesus, the disciples, and the crowd, blood is the life force. It is so holy that it's reserved for God alone. For a mere human being to consume blood is the gravest sacrilege. How can anyone eat Jesus' flesh and drink his blood? Many of the disciples find this hard to take. Jesus presses them further. Does this offend you? There's more to come when I ascend to God where I was before. The words I have spoken are spirit and life. But some of you don't believe. Believe is a mistranslation. The Greek word is better translated as trust. This is not about logical arguments or proof. It really has nothing to do with the mind at all. Trust is about loyalty, commitment. That's where you give your heart. In other words, trust is really about relationship. Jesus is saying, some of you don't trust me. You're not in relationship with me. And those disciples leave. They walk away. But not Simon Peter. Simon Peter stays. He has used the mind God has given him and made the connections Jesus wanted him to make about bread. In his world, bread was the basic food that kept you alive. In Israel and Palestine, even today, at every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, from the simplest family supper to the most elaborate feast, on the table is a plate of bread. Simon Peter understands that Jesus is as necessary for life as bread. When you eat bread, as it is chewed and swallowed and broken down in the stomach and absorbed in the intestines, it becomes part of you. To eat Jesus' flesh is to have so close a relationship with him, to trust him so absolutely that he becomes part of you. He abides in you and you abide in him. Simon Peter has that kind of relationship with Jesus, and it is life, true life, abundant life, eternal life, here and now. When Jesus asks, "Do you also want to leave?" Simon Peter answers with the deepest truth he knows. To whom can we go? You have the words of eternal life. By being in relationship with you, we've come to trust that you are the Holy One of God. As close as he is to Jesus, Simon Peter remains all too human. When Jesus is arrested and put on trial, Simon Peter is terrified. He turns away from Jesus and tries to save himself. He denies even knowing Jesus. Simon Peter realizes almost right away what he has done, and he is ashamed. His relationship with Jesus is destroyed, and it's his fault. Now Jesus is dead, and there's nothing Simon Peter can do to make it right. Sometime later, Simon Peter and several other disciples go fishing on the Sea of Galilee. Jesus, now risen, stands on the beach and greets them. Simon Peter is so afraid of what Jesus will say to him that he jumps out of the boat and tries to swim away. That always makes me laugh. It is so human to freak out and try to run away like that. But Simon Peter screws up his courage and comes back to shore. Jesus cooks breakfast for him and the other disciples. After they've eaten, Jesus turns to Simon Peter and asks him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Simon Peter says, "Yes, I love you." You can picture him choking up, hardly able to get the words out, trying so hard to atone for what he's done and so scared of what Jesus will say to him. But Jesus doesn't condemn Simon Peter or demand answers. He simply says, "Feed my sheep." Do you love me, trust me? Do you want to be in relationship with me? Then feed my sheep. As you have been fed by the bread of life, go out and feed others with that same bread. Jesus' words are the way back and the path forward that Simon Peter never imagined were possible. Whatever was broken in Simon Peter begins to heal. His transformation can help to transform others. Those words of Jesus become Simon Peter's purpose in life. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. Where is Jesus today in our hurting and broken world? The bread of life is with us, giving us his very self as food. He draws us into relationship with him. That relationship transforms us, and we are sent out to draw others into relationship with him. What does Jesus ask of us who follow him? He says, do you love me? Feed my sheep. Feed my sheep in Haiti, in Afghanistan, in Worthington and Columbus and Lewis Center and Powell. We feed Jesus' sheep by donating to Episcopal Relief and Development, which works with the Episcopal Diocese of Haiti on long-term development and rebuilding. We feed Jesus' sheep by calling our senators and representatives advocating for more visas and faster processing for the Afghans who risk their lives to help the American military. We feed Jesus' sheep by volunteering for nonprofits like Community Refugee and Immigration Services, which helps refugees from Afghanistan and other nations build new lives in Central Ohio. We feed Jesus' sheep by getting vaccinated, wearing our masks indoors, having our kids wear masks. And we feed Jesus' sheep by doing all this in his name, that our witness to the abundant life we have in Jesus may draw others into relationship with him. As we feed Jesus' sheep, Jesus feeds us. He is as necessary to us as bread, as nourishing and sustaining. He abides in us and we in him, and that close relationship transforms us. He gives us life, true life, abundant life, eternal life, here and now.